It's been said that there have been four major paradigms or way of viewing the world throughout human history. A couple of weeks ago I brought you here to Belgrave Cemetery, where I introduced you to my great-great-grandparents. And what I was saying that this place speaks of something of my identity. The primary paradigms through which we human beings understand the world, right from the beginning of human consciousness, has been the home, the oikos, the family, or the tribe. And this place still speaks something of the way that I understand the world through my family story. That is also symbolised by the dining room table here in the house in the oikos at Belgrave. This table speaks of family and of identity and of learning to see the world in a certain way through the paradigm of the family, of the tribe. We also see this dynamic in today's gospel, where we have the disciples coming to see Jesus and say, look, there are these other people. They're not our tribe. They're not our family. They don't come from our house. And they're doing all these things. And Jesus responds in a way that starts to open up a bigger world for them and says, well, if they're not against us, then they're for us. And what he's doing there is he's attempting to get their heads out of that tribal paradigm and open their eyes to another way of seeing things. Well, we did eventually move out of that family tribal way of understanding and viewing the world into that second stage, which is the religious paradigm. And we started to see the world through a bigger perspective, through a divine perspective. And we understood what was happening around us had something to do with the cosmological God. The Judeo-Christian scriptures are the most comprehensive long-term study of this phenomena of seeing things through a faith paradigm or a faith perspective. We began to see our individual stories in the context of a greater narrative, of a greater story, and came to understand our lives from that perspective. Following the influence of the Enlightenment, the faith perspective on our understanding of the world began to evolve. And while we didn't throw out faith, of course, we did start to change the way we saw the paradigm. We started to change the way we saw the makeup of the world around us. And eventually what came out of that was the isms started to evolve, and we began to get such things as Marxism and fascism and communism, and then eventually capitalism. Now clearly in the West, capitalism was the one that prevailed and started to influence the next stage in that development of the paradigms in the way we saw our environment. Well, the triumph of capitalism led us to the most recent paradigm, and that is the economic paradigm, where we start to see everything in economic terms. Now, there's no doubt that capitalism has brought some good things. It has lifted many people out of poverty and brought many blessings. But it has also caused not only the commodification of humanity, but the commodification of creation. This, of course, brings us to one of Jesus' hard sayings that we find in today's gospel. The saying that if something causes you to stumble, if your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. If your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Now, of course, this is not to be taken literally. It is a metaphor. But it does lead us to the next stage in our development from the economic paradigm, where we have commodified and abused creation, into the ecological paradigm, where we start to see things from a different perspective. And then, of course, there is the ecological paradigm, the one that we are clearly entering now. If I had time to take you to the top of that mountain that's behind us there, you would get a 360-degree panoramic view of the surrounding country and get a whole different perspective on things. And I think that's what the ecological paradigm is inviting us to do, is to look outside of our own tribal shibboleths, our own religious framework, our own ideologies, our own economic needs, and look at the big picture. And seeing the big picture, begin to take a deep sense of appreciation that the environment is not against us, it is for us. When we come from our own tiny little perspective, we fall into the trap of thinking that the environment is somehow against us, that we have to tame it and protect ourselves from it. It is not against us, it is for us. If only we could appreciate its gifts and its beauty and enter into partnership with it. That's what the ecological paradigm is asking us to do, is to move outside of our own tribal shibboleths into a much greater perspective. Now, while the ecological view certainly invites us into the big picture, it also invites us into the small picture. To do as Thomas Berry suggests, enter into conversation with the river and the wind and the land and the universe. The ecological view invites us to join with Moses and take the shoes off our feet and to know that we stand on holy ground. It invites us to look deeply at the tiny things in life. The pebbles, the leaves floating by, the tiny organisms that enrich every ecosystem. But there is a fourth way of being that I think Jesus actually invites us into, and that takes the best of the other four and puts them all together. It takes the best of our family and tribal identities, our religious identity. It takes the best of our political attempts to live together and to thrive. It takes the best of our knowledge of how to prosper in this world. It takes the best of our understanding of our ecology and the creation. It wraps them all up, and Jesus calls that the kingdom. And he invites us into that paradigm, that way of being, to be the best of who we can, to love one another and to care for all the gifts of God's creation that has been given to us.